episode of Supercoach, mates. Well, the countdown is nearly over. There are only 4 more sleeps at the time of recording this till the start of the 2022 AFL season. And obviously with that, it means it's time for our team reveals. So, I've got both the guys here. So both Thomas and Jonas are here. And all 3 of us are going to go through our teams. We're going to talk about some of our smoky picks. We're going to talk about some players who might be a little bit of a question mark as to why we've gone for them. So I'll introduce the guys. So I'll start with Jonas. So how you going, Jonas? How's your weekend been, mate?
Good. Yeah, it's been busy, but I mean, just with uni and stuff, it's kept me distracted from looking at the clock and waiting for round 1 to start. So no, it's good. It's crept up. So no, it's exciting.
Yes, and I've also got Thomas here. Hello, Thomas. How you going?
Yeah, not too bad. Only a couple of days left before round 1, so it'll be a bit of fun. And as Jonas as well, pretty busy with work and stuff, so it's kept me distracted from changing my team about 1,000 times, which is nice.
Right, well, that was actually going to be the first question that I asked you both was how many times have you guys looked at your side in the last week? I have probably looked at it maybe once or twice. What about you guys? Are you guys both about the same, or are you guys those guys who look at it like 10 times a day?
I try to avoid it because I know that I'm going to stuff things up before round 1. So, I mean, trying to keep it maybe, say in the next couple of days, have a couple more looks at it. But I reckon I'm pretty much set bar a few things. Nothing drastic, though.
Are you the same, Jonas?
I probably look at it a bit more than you guys, maybe once or twice a day at least, just tinkering with things and looking at different solutions, but it doesn't really change too much. So yeah, I mean, I could probably look at the team as much as you, Nathan. I'd probably be in a similar sort of position. So
yeah,
it doesn't really matter. Just wait till the team sheets come out, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's all we can do now. All right, well, without further ado, so we're going to reveal the first team here. So you guys, if you're watching this as a video, you probably won't see me much throughout this podcast. But the first side we're going to reveal is Thomas's side. So Thomas, obviously, team name What a Steal. Thomas, do you want to go through some of your picks? There's some interesting picks I can see here on my screen. So start with the back line.
Yeah, we'll start from the back. This was a tough one because obviously, with the lack of rookie selections, it makes it difficult to kind of just have your set three primos and things like that. But pretty much I've had Short and Whitford have been locked in from the get-go, which has been handy to have since pre-season. I was a bit sceptical about Short and his ability to score, but obviously without Hooley, he's been the main man. Ridley's pretty much a placeholder. I'm not exactly sure who I'll go with. Could be Stewart, or could be Crisp with those two. So, yeah, really depends on who I go with that one. Obviously, I've got a bit of cash in the kitty, as you can see, so it's easily changeable. Hewitt's one that I'm not entirely sure I'll cap. I'm pretty happy with him at the moment. Not overly confident with how he'll go with Walsh on the side, but I've left him in there. Chapman's the one that I've watched a fair bit of him in both his pre-season games. He looks real clean and by foot skills. And he's priced at a not a bad price. He obviously scored pretty impressively in both JLT games. But having said that, they did play West Coast, so it's one of those things where you take with a bit of a grain of salt considering how bad West Coast were. But I heard on the commentary also that, West Coast, not West Coast, Freo, they like to chip mark. The defence has changed a little bit since last year. So they like to chip mark a little bit, which is nice, and I guess that will help a lot of the Freo defenders. Just quickly through the mids then, the one big omission, obviously, Jack McRae, which is someone I really want to get in. So he's one that if I do bring in, I'll probably have to sacrifice one of my forwards and make Ridley to a Sicily, for example, which I've tinkered with. That allows me to bring McRae in. So Steele, Miller haven't left my side since day one. Neither is Neil with his price point. Rao is one that me and Jonas obviously had a bit of a chat off air, a little bit sceptical on. But considering how much he dominated against West Coast, and they've got West Coast round one actually.
Yeah,
How much Rao dominated against the Cats, I think it was. They both Miller and Rao could actually go, 140. It could be a bit of a bloodbath there. So I think he's priced at a good price point. He's one that had to flip the structure around a little bit to fit in him, which meant McRae had to go. And Berry's locked in from day one. Obviously, with the podcast we had with our Brisbane guest, we had big raps on Berry, which was nice to see. Horn, Francis, Dacos, Ward, Stevens, almost must-haves. I'd say not Dacos. I'd say Horn, Francis is one that you probably could go without in a sense because of role, playing potentially, predominantly half forward. But I think with his high popularity, it's almost like 70% owned. It's almost you might have to have him, because if he does score over 100 round one, it's tough luck. So I've kept him in there for now. I don't think that structure really changes with the rookies, even if I do manage to put McRae in. Rucks haven't really touched. Obviously had Darcy to start with, but injury concerns in pre-season worried me a tad. Have tinkered with potentially having Marshall and the likes of even Wits in there, but it kind of screws the rest structure up. It doesn't leave me with much cash, even though I've got an extra primo in field. And I think Gawn is so reliable, and Grundy's obviously been a lock since day one. So the forward line is where I'm still debating whether I'll take 2 or 3 primos. Obviously, the one that stands out is Tim English. I had Heaney in there, and I've kind of gone off Heaney a little bit. But English has been the one that it's kind of like I had him in the ruck R2, but wasn't too pleased with that. But having him as F2 is one that I'm pretty, I would say, probably 60-40 confident with. Obviously, has that shocking matchup with Gawn, which doesn't help him. But I heard on Twitter that I think rounds 2 to 8, he's got a really cushy draw. And if he's ruck solo, I could see him getting consistent over 100. He's so good around the ground. The only issue with him is obviously Steph Martin. If Steph Martin plays, it becomes a little bit difficult because I'd probably not have him. And if that's the case, then I'll probably dump him for a rookie like a McGovern or someone, and then bump up one of my defenders, or even try and get McRae. And so I think the team sheets will be a big indicator of that. And I think I'm a bit lucky with the fact that Melbourne and the Dogs play first. So we'll find out Tuesday night whether English has his sidekick in Martin. So that makes life a little bit easier. I mean, Zach Butters is a lock. It'd be crazy not to have him. Caniglio is a lock. And Sherry and Rochelle obviously down there. Sherry's one that I'm pretty happy with if he's solo ruck with, not even solo ruck, if he just rucks without CCJ and Rochelle. I mean, the kid can score goals for fun. So pretty big cash cow, which is nice. So yeah, it's my team. Obviously, the rookies there can change anytime. I've just kind of have there as placeholders, and I'm pretty confident most of them can play. Will Kelly was one that I've just brought in. Initially was a cash issue, but can easily go up to Sin and the like. But yeah, I think that's my side set up. Obviously, probably change a few times for round one, but we'll see how we go. But yeah, pretty happy with how it's set up so far.
Very, very good side. Have you got any questions for Thomas, Jonas, about any selections or anything? I have one, but I'll let you go first.
Sure. One question I have is with regards to the back line. You've picked a lot of value-oriented picks down there. My question is, if you do roll with those 4, are you concerned about missing out on come season's end a potential Crisp, Lloyd, Stewart, Dawson, and whoever else may get DPP, because you've got 2 spots left open, but with a lot of those that you've got, I'm not sure all 4 would be top 6 relevant. How would you navigate around getting some of those other slightly more expensive players into your side? Or is that something where you just will cop on the chin the fact that you won't be able to get, say, a Crisp, for example, who you'd assume would outscore Ridley in the end, but is a bit more expensive? Is that something you're willing to just deal with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I've got 84k in the bank. So if this structure stays the same, then I probably will end up moving Ridley up to one of those Stewart, Crisp, most likely Crisp with the DPP. I've got an easy enough money, and then enough money to potentially move on, say, Kelly if he doesn't get named, or or gets named in a forward line and move him up to Sydney if he gets played. So I've got money there, which is quite flexible. On the flip side, I guess, say I upgraded somewhere else, for example, to maybe a more expensive rookie. I wouldn't be too fussed. I don't think Crisp, Stewart, and Lloyd are must have in the defence. Like, Crisp is probably the most impressive one, and obviously helps a lot with DPP. However, I think I saw a stat somewhere, I don't know if it was in our chat or not, but I think without Moore and Howe on the side, he scores a lot stronger, and obviously that was quite predominant last year. However, I think I saw somewhere that basically half the Collingwood side's coming back on Friday night. So you got Howe, Quain or Moore all coming back into that defensive line. I don't know how that will affect Chris, but I don't think it'll affect him too much, especially with Maynard out. But it's one that I don't think it's something like, say, I don't know, for example, you miss out on McRae, but you've got a Brayshaw. I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference. Stewart's the same. He scores basically, 110 to 115 so consistently. But just having Ridley, Short, Whitfield, their upside is huge. I mean, Ridley, Short is one that obviously went gangbusters. Ridley's got the potential to go 150. Another person who I know that I mentioned in our chat off air is Daniel Rich. I know Jonas isn't a huge fan of him, but he's one that is a potential another option. He scored like 81 in 3 quarters. The main reason for that is he was quite durable last year. Obviously he has his injury histories and he's quite old, but there's basically no one down that's going to take kick-ins off him. The one that was the risk was Cameron Coleman, but he's out for 8 to 10 weeks, and there's not many other players that I don't think will take a kick out instead of Rich. You got Ainsworth and I think Darcy Wilmot, who might come in round 2. He's another rookie that I think is not a bad option if you run out of rookie defenders and you want to stick someone in that is going to miss round 1. I think Wilmot might come in round 2 after a suspension just to help out in the defensive there. But I think Rich is one that potentially might come in. He's got a huge upside if he takes kickouts. Obviously, Grant Birchall was there last year and took about 30% of kickouts, and he's not there anymore. Obviously, retired. So you remove him out of the equation, you got 30% more kickouts for Rich. And if he does that, you're looking at 120, 130 pretty consistently if that's the case. So it's one of those things I'm not too fussed about. But yeah, I'd say that Ridley's the one that will go to more a Crisp like if the money's still there and all the rookies are set and structure's set. But he's also one that can go down to Sicily if I decide to get McRae in for sure.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, I'm going to ask you here about Jaden Short. Now, did you have Jaden Short last year, Thomas?
Yeah, and killed me. Yeah, it annoys the living shit out of me, unfortunately.
One of the things that a lot of those higher ranked players do is once burnt, never again. Okay?
Yeah.
So he's burnt you last year, okay, and you're now picking him again. Are you concerned that he could just do exactly what he did last year and just have 151 week go gangbusters, and then the next game he comes out, he scores 50 and he barely gets seen after quarter time? Is this something that's gone through your mind with picking him?
Not really, not anymore. It was before the preseason. I was like, surely Dan Rioli or Lawson or someone might take a few points off and Short still's inconsistent. Obviously, you don't know until round 1, but I think, everything's going to go through him. Unfortunately for non-owners, I think Richmond's defense it's a bit inexperienced in that regards now. They've lost a few key posts here and there, and Ralph Smith and Rioli, even though they're playing half back, they're not that great. They're still inexperienced, and you don't know how many games Ralph Smith will play. Rioli's just moved down back there, so he's still pretty raw to that role. And I think Short is so important for that Richmond side. He's pretty much the best kick in that Richmond side. If the ball doesn't go through him, I can't see Richmond winning too many games. Like, as a bit of a joke, we mentioned I would be surprised if Carlton decided to put a tagger on him and try to nullify his impact round 1. But even that's the case, he could take kickouts, and I think just naturally the ball's going to go. He ends up doing that Lloyd thing where he just hangs around the back and asks for the ball, because I think they need the ball in his hand to do any damage going forward for sure.
And my second question here for you. So you've got 4 ruckmen here in your side.
Yeah.
where do we draw the line with how many ruckmen we can have in our side? Do we think that having 4 rucks in the side is sustainable instead of say these smaller midfielder types who can go forward? What do we think about that?
I think it's just scoring potential. Like, obviously, Sherry's a rookie, so I don't think he really counts as an important person to take in consideration. It's just one of those things where these rucks score naturally, because especially if they're a solid ruck, it's like they're guaranteed to score 80s to 100s as a shit ruckman. Obviously, if a good ruckman, then you're going to score over 100 pretty consistently. Like, English played against McInerney, I'm pretty sure, which is not a bad ruck, and he scored 116 and had 21 disposals. So he's obviously not going to do that every time. He's just one that I'm semi-confident on. He's one that is droppable. So, for example, if I'm bringing McRae and English goes and Ridley goes, for example, and if I want to bring in a Jordan Dawson, the first one to go is English, who is one that's in the team at the moment based on structure. I had Heaney in there. I don't like his role. Like, he's one that I know people are dropping off. I know George released his video on YouTube and he had Heaney in his side. I'm not confident.
And he is our favourite burn.
Yeah,
he is our favourite burn player, Isaac
Heaney. He's in the same category as Dan Houston. But yeah, Tim English obviously got that shocking matchup against Gordon. I wouldn't be too surprised if he doesn't do much, but he's one of the players that I do believe he's still better than Heaney and even the likes of De Goey if he has that not the best role in up forward. But yeah, it's one of those things where he's the one that could be interchangeable, but I'm pretty confident. And this is obviously if Steph Martin plays and there's any inkling of him playing, then unfortunately he's the one to go. But if he's not and he's sole ruck for the Dogs, I think he'll score regardless.
Fair enough. Have you got any more questions about his side, Jonas? Or
not really. It's a pretty flawless team.
Yeah, I think so. All
right.
right.
Move on to the next one.
Yeah, so you guys can probably all see me now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do Jonas's side next. Let me just get it up on my screen. There we go. All right, Mr. Jonas, you're up, buddy. Let's talk through your side.
Sure. All right. So at D1, I've got Tom Stewart. I think he's got not a lot of upside at his price, but he's pretty consistent before his injury. And with Lockie Henderson out of the side and Tui not really cementing too much of a spot, he should get even more kick-ins and takes heaps of contested intercept marks. So he's one I'd be pretty happy to start with. Crisp as well, just uber reliable, doesn't get injured. Same with Short. And then I've got Whitfield at D4. I think his price and upside are too good to pass up, even though he's a bit fragile at times. And then Hewitt at D5 as well, at under 400k, playing a midfield role. He's one who I think could become a potential keeper. And then at D6, Hinge, he's shown scoring potential, but he's a bit injury prone, so he's one that I'm not fully sold on. But if he lines up round one, I'm sure he could definitely score quite well. So he's one to just monitor on the team sheets. And then into the midfield, I've got McRae just as a good, reliable VC option week in, week out. Plays a safe role where he doesn't get tagged, so he shouldn't fall too much in price. And then Miller, I've got it M2. I just think Miller's got the best work rate out of anyone in the competition, and with Wits coming back into the side, Gold Coast naturally improving a bit, and no Greenwood being there, I can see some upside with the pick. And then at M3, I've got Lockie Neal, pretty self-explanatory pick, and then followed by Berry. Berry impressed me in the preseason games, so he's one who I intend to trade around the buys. Hopefully he gets to around 500k by then. He's shown good scoring history, but he is a bit injury prone, so he's one to monitor. And then Horn Francis and Dacos and Ward and Stevens, I can, with the first three, place them all together. Good job security, good roles, good scoring, particularly with regards to roles for Dacos and Ward. But with Horn Francis, he scored pretty well in the preseason games playing forward as well. especially in a 100-point defeat to Melbourne. So he's one who I'm not too concerned about scoring poorly if North Melbourne play poorly. In the rucks, Gawn and Grundy. Grundy, in my opinion's a lock. Gawn, I've tossed up between Gawn and Darcy. Really just depends on whether or not you prefer to play risky with Darcy, because his upside's enormous, but with Gawn, you know what you'll get, and he won't get injured, and he's proven over multiple years now to be arguably the best, if not the second best ruckman in the game. Then moving on to the forward line, Dunkley and Butters haven't left my side for... I don't think Dunkley's ever left my side, and Butters has been in my side since early January, I'd say. He's got a good role and finds a way to score very well. And then at F3, Cornelio, I think he's in for a redemption year, and he's one where I don't think you can go without him. He's retained some form. He might play a bit of time up forward, but at 260,000, I think he's one where you just have to pick him. And then some more speculative picks here. But to round out the forward line, I've got at F4 McGovern. His durability issues do concern me, but compared to Brodie and Rel Smith, I'm quite confident on his job security. And so if he's able to stay on the park and be healthy, he's one where he could score quite well. But in saying that, I haven't seen how he scores with Doherty and both Wiedering and Doherty in the side. So I think his scoring avenues might dry up a bit. But if he takes multiple intercepts in a game, he could easily score 80 or above. And then at F5, one I'm also not too sold on, but impressed last week against West Coast is Will Brodie. He didn't play with Fife in the side, but when he was on the field, he impressed in the midfield and was able to rack up almost, I think, 30 touches, if not 30. One where I'm slightly concerned about his inability to play up forward, which could mean he could get kicked out of the side at any stage with Fife returning. And the fact is, I think he had 67% time on ground, so maybe there's some issues still with his fitness. So one where I'll monitor, but at the moment he's in my side just because of the fact he looked and impressed me in the midfield role he was playing last week. And then lastly, similar to Tom, I've taken a liking to Zeri. Even if he gets half split with Goldstein in the ruck, he should still score quite comfortably. And being a ruckman, I think that's a pretty safe role, particularly in a shaky forward line. If he can just maintain his spot, he should be able to average around 80 points and make a good 150,000. So yeah, that's my team.
Yeah, I mean, pretty flawless in that regards.
Good side. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got any questions for him, Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, but a pretty solid side, and most pretty commonly picked players. You can't really go wrong with any of them. There's two I have just off the bat. So obviously you touched on Will Brodie with Fife not being in the side. So obviously Fife's come out and said that I think it was in the captain's interviews when they did the trophy presentation, all that with all the captains. And Fife pretty much said, I'm going to play full-time midfield, and the experiment with playing up forward is pretty much over. Does that concern you in any way? And obviously Will Brodie's time on ground was pretty low, and it's pretty impressive that he scored well, but obviously that was against West Coast's basically waffles midfield. Is there an element of doubt with Brodie, or is he one that's more a placeholder than anything until you kind of confirm on the team list with Brodie?
Oh, 100%. That did fill me with a lot of concern. I think Fife probably does take a bit of Brodie's mid-minutes, although I think Crowden or someone, I believe it was Crowden was playing as well.
Crowden's in that midfield, yeah.
I think Brodie would be in front of Crowden just because of the fact that Crowden can play more forward. So that's one to monitor. He's certainly not a placeholder. I do have him in front of Ralph Smith just primarily because he's been playing midfield for multiple years now, and he's shown good ability to score in VFL, albeit, but he has scoring potential. One where I'll only not pick him if I need that extra 20,000 from going down to Rel Smith. Although his job security, I classify it similar to Rel Smith in the sense that they're both probably at around the bottom 2 of the top 22 in their sides, and ones where you just hope they play early, score a few 75 plus, get to around 330k, and then worst case scenario, you trade him out then. So he's one I'm not completely sold on, but with some of the 200k options like Kerno and Rayner, I certainly have him in front of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair enough. I guess it's one of those things where you can easily change here and there. I guess Nathan can probably touch on a little bit on the midfield setup, I guess. But with the defenders, obviously Tom Stewart, Mr. Reliable. I don't know if this draws any concern, but he has, I think it was announced on the news or whatever that he's I wouldn't say touch and go for round one, but there is a possibility that he might be laid out because of the birth of his daughter, I think it is, or new child coming up very soon. And I think they were due 2 days before round one or something like that. Is there any concern that, for example, worst case scenario, I'm not sure when Geelong play. I think it's a Saturday night. But
Saturday afternoon. Yeah,
okay, Saturday afternoon. Yeah. So worst case scenario, put it this way, that Stewart is a late out, say Saturday morning, lockout's been gone, you missed most of the defenders. Is there a doubt in that, or you're pretty confident that you're going to lock in Stewart in round one regardless?
I think Stewart's pretty safe in that aspect because unless I'm completely disconnected from the internet, I wouldn't start Stewart. But because Ridley plays that game and then there are a few other options on the Sunday or Saturday night, he's one that I can easily just interchange. So I'm not too concerned. And the fact that he's arguably was the best defender who's still defender eligible this year from last year, he's one where I think he's a pretty safe pick, and I hope he's overcome that injury. He certainly seems that way. It certainly seemed that way last week, especially, but that's something that has certainly deterred a few coaches. But as a slight point of difference, that sort of appeals to me as well because there are so many teams that are running your generic Ridley, Short, Whitfield combination. And so having Stewart instead of a Crisp or a Lloyd as well does sort of give me an edge in that aspect. So he could be one that either kills me or propels me a bit more forward.
Yeah, for sure. Any initial comments on that one, on his team, Nathan?
Not really. I presume you've only gone the 4 big guys down back and Hewitt as D5 because there's no defensive rookies. I presume you normally wouldn't do that.
Yeah, 100%.
You're not worried about a lack of high scorers in the midfield to start off with. Like you've only got McRae and Miller and Neil, who are sort of your big 3 midfielders, and then it goes straight down to Berry at M4. You're sort of not worried about that.
I've tinkered with having Raul in my side. However, at the moment, this is the structure I've got just because I'm quite comfortable with how my forward line looks. Normally, people would have Rochelle at F6, but having Rochelle on the bench really strengthens that forward line. I'm not sure on Rochelle's consistency. He'll certainly have those games where he gets 80, but there'll be those sort of games where he doesn't get on the end of a cheap goal or a well-earned goal in that sense because he has been kicking some good ones and scores 40, whereas Cherry might come out and score 95, for example, and that's a 55-point gap that Berry could probably cover if I didn't have a Raul or a McRae, a Steele, for example. So I think I've compromised certainly in the midfield, but having Hinge at D6 and Zeri at F6, I think levels it out nicely, and certainly the midfield will be a priority come, say, round 6 when we're doing upgrades. But for now, having Stevens at M8 doesn't really concern me too much.
Fair enough. No, other than that, I think it's a pretty well-rounded good side.
Thank you.
We'll finish off with
Nathan's
mine.
Side. Which I've already got mine up, I think. Hang on, I just gotta get out of this. Quick. Right, here's mine. So we'll go share my team. Here we go. All right, so my team. Here we go. Right, so obviously, Jake Lloyd, I think, picks himself. I've been a big fan of his all preseason. I think he'll still be the highest scoring defender at the end of the year. Jack Crisp, obviously, Collingwood scarf tightly wrapped around my neck with this pick, but I think he picked for himself. I'm not too concerned about Howe or Darcy Moore. I think if they come back in, I think he's pretty much got a spot in that midfield anyway, and I think that's where he'll probably play most of his football this year anyway. Whitfield and Sicily, I am a little bit concerned about their bodies, and didn't really want to have Sicily in there. But I think out of all of those sort of mid-price picks, I think he's shown over the preseason that he's somewhat back to his best football, and I think he's going to take a lot of kick-outs at Hawthorn. They like the ball in his hands. He's got that big kick on him. Hinge, pretty much same reason as what the other guy said. He's showed over the preseason that he could score quite well. And McCartan and the other two, so Gibcus, and I've got Will Gold on there. I'm hoping he gets the game this year, but again, that could change. But I think I'm pretty happy with Gibcus and McCartan as defensive rookies. Anyway, midfield. So Jack McRae hasn't left my side all preseason. I personally think that you're crazy if you're not picking him. I think he will easily be the highest scoring midfielder again this year, and I think you're going to really struggle to get him in if you don't start with him. And Jack Steele, I think Steele and McRae will be top two midfielders. So I'm just going to pick both of them and just enjoy the ride with them. Lockie Neal, shown he's back to his best. I did kind of put the mods on him after his Brownlow medal. So I'm glad to see that he's back to his best. Patrick Cripps, I'm happy to take the punt on him at that price. He does really look back to his best. I have a family member that goes for Carlton. So I do go to a lot of Carlton games. In the last couple of years, he has looked a little bit slow around the stoppages, but preseason game, he's shown that he's got that burst back. He pretty much tore Melbourne's midfield apart by himself in that practice game. Matt Rowell, I'm happy to take a punt on him. He's number one draft pick. Some people have said that he's equal to, if not better than, Sam Walsh. We all love Sam Walsh. Just had a horror run with injuries. And I think he could be someone who we might be looking at keeping, depending on how he goes. I think the other three, so Horn, Francis, Dacos, and Ward, I think picked themselves. And Dylan Stevens at M9, I would like to try and get him on the field, but that might be something that I work on. Ruck, so Gawn, Grundy pretty much haven't left my side. I did have some question marks about Max Gawn. But obviously with the community series and the practice matches, he showed that even with Jackson taking, 60-40 split in the ruck, that Gawn's still capable of scoring 120 odds. So, and obviously Grundy, again, the Collingwood scarf wrapped tightly around my neck. And in the forward line, just like Jonas, Dunkley hasn't left my side since day one. Butters, I think, picks himself. I think he might be the highest scoring forward this year, which is probably a big call, but he's 2 monster scores over the preseason. I think there's going to be a lot of ball through that Port Adelaide midfield, and I think he's someone who they will look to use. Cornelio, I completely agree with the other two. I think this is redemption year for him. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a top 20 midfielder this year. I know that's a big call, but I think he's a must-have. Brody, again, I'm a little bit speculative on him. He could come out. Zeri, I've come on too late. I think it was Spiller in our draft podcast. Sort of got huge raps on him, so I'm happy to take the punt on him as a ruckman. Rochelle, I think he showed over the preseason. Even if he's prone to having a quieter game, I think at that price, I think he's probably one of the better picks. And then obviously, everyone on the bench, other than I think Gibcus and Hayes and DeConing and Martin and Stevens is subject to change. But that's my side. So yeah, I'm quite happy with where my side sits at the minute. Obviously, there's still 4 days to go, but yeah, I'm quite happy with where it sits.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really complain. Again, you got no real picks that scream you got to get rid of them. Just a couple, I guess, is with regards to Jake Lloyd. Do you reckon he's one that potentially might see a reduction in points just based off kind of how he transgressed last year a little bit with the lower scoring output with the likes of Jordan Dawson? Obviously, Jordan Dawson's left the side. So they've now got Justin McInerney and Nick Blakey off the half back line and McInerney off the wings. And they seem to like to have the ball quite a fair bit in the hands of the wingers, a la Jordan Dawson last year. Do you reckon is he the best option for D1, or is he one that you're just going to stick and roll with and just kind of appreciate the highest, not the highest scoring, the consistent scoring rather than someone like, as you mentioned before, in a short whose last was prone to a bit of an up and down scoring potential?
Yeah, look, I'm not sure about you guys, but like once I pick my premium picks, so like Lloyd, McRae, Steele, I don't really care what their price is. Like as long as they're still scoring consistently, then it doesn't really bother me what price they're at. I guess with the question about the regression, I'm a little bit of a mathematical nerd, and there is a mathematical concept called regression back to the mean. So Lloyd's obviously at his high point, and there will come a time where he will regress back to sort of around where everyone else is. I'm not sure if that's this season though. I think he turns 30 this year. I think he's still got 1 or 2 good years left in him. And I think if Sydney are to play finals again, I think they need the ball in his hands as much as possible off that back line. Because he pretty much doesn't miss a target with that. And I think he's probably going to take most of Sydney's kickouts this season as well. So obviously we know that kickouts, especially if they go long and to advantage, do score you a lot of points. So I'm happy with that Jake Lloyd pick. But in terms of his regression, it's obviously a little bit concerning, but I don't think it's enough to justify not picking him.
Yeah, I mean that's a fair call. Jonas, have you got any final few words to say about Nathan's squad?
Yeah, just one question. I see you're missing some potential candidates that if you go without could severely leave you behind the pack. A la George Hewitt, Jared Berry, and arguably Tuke Miller, but you've got Steele and McRae. So mainly focusing on Hewitt and Berry. Are you concerned that if they continue their preseason form and they're not on your side, that you're going to struggle to maintain a really good rank?
Well, I've kind of got Sicily and Rail in those 2 spots. So I'm pretty much going versus those 2. So I'm pretty much going Sicily and Rail versus Hewitt and Berry. So the only question I have over Hewitt, we haven't seen Sam Walsh yet in that side. And I'm not convinced that with the way Samos plays and scores, I'm not convinced that they can share that midfield scoring around entirely. So I am a little bit worried about his scoring once Sam Walsh comes back into that side. And as for Raul and obviously the Jared Berry pick, I'm happy to go with Raul over Berry because I know Raul, top junior, has had a wretched run with injury in the AFL, but pretty much right throughout his junior season, I think he pretty much played completely uninterrupted, and it's pretty much as soon as he's got into the AFL that his body just, for whatever reason, hasn't stood up. But I don't think he's going to get tagged often either, which has come into my questions. But I think if you're going to tag someone at the Gold Coast, I don't know why you would because they're probably not going to win many games. But I think you've surely got to go to Touk Miller. And I think Raul might do what Raul does best, which is just accumulate disposal, kick some goals. Whereas I haven't really seen Berry do it. I know we did have that podcast, and I will say a disclaimer that I have had both Berry and Hewitt in my side. I have had both of them in there. But at this stage they're not in there, but it is 4 days out from round one, and that could change before then. But at this stage, I'm happy to take the punt on Sicily and Raul over Hewitt and Berry.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. And I think, as the viewers now, if we're trying to get this on YouTube, so you'll probably see our teams there as well. But as the viewers can see, it's pretty similar all around. So whether or not, any one of us will decide to go a little bit different before round one is yet to be seen. As you're well aware, teams change. People change their teams a lot before round one, and I'm sure that we'll tinker our teams leading up to the Wednesday partial lockout. But I think that's all we got time for today. So as we said, we're trying to get these out on YouTube ASAP. I'll try and get this one out before round one, not round one, before the teams get released on the Tuesday night. So we'll see how we go there. It's great to see. I've just had a look at our leagues that our div, our first head-to-head league is complete. Our cash league is pretty much complete now. We've got 3 spots remaining for our head-to-head second league. So the code for that is 446800. So we've got 3 more spots left for that. If you're keen to hop on and have a go at one of us. So yeah, I guess we'll be probably pop on again potentially before teams get released, or when teams get released. Sorry, before the lockout.
I got to do my tips as well.
Yeah, so that's when I guess we'll run through the round one games and see who's the winners and losers of that one. But until then, we'll catch you for bumper lead up to round one for sure.